Tonight we begin with a military strike that Pentagon officials had feared, anticipated, and prepared for over several tense weeks. A strike that unfolded not over days or weeks but in a matter of hours. Hours that reshaped the balance of power across the entire Middle East. Hours that sent shockwaves through Tehran's military command. Structure, hours that left Iran's carefully constructed revenge infrastructure in smoldering ruins. What Iran did crossed a line that Washington had hoped would hold. And when that line broke, the United States did not hesitate. They responded with precision, overwhelming force, and a message so clear that no translation was needed. For months now there had been signals, not from official diplomatic channels, not from formal United Nations communications, just quiet intelligence signals that Iran was preparing something unprecedented. Iran has been aggressive, yes, but they have been calculated in their aggression. Their moves have followed a certain rhythm, a predictability, almost a choreography that Western intelligence agencies had learned to read. But what set off alarm bells in Washington this time was that the rhythm suddenly went silent and the predictable patterns completely disappeared from every monitoring system. Intelligence analysts who monitor Iranian military activity know the warning indicators all too well. The movement of ballistic missile launchers to concealed positions, the activation of encrypted communication networks that had been dormant for years, the sudden dispersal of Revolutionary Guard commanders away from known headquarters. The unexpected silencing of all electronic communications from key military installations. All of that went quiet simultaneously across multiple Iranian military sites. And whenever Iran goes quiet like that, every analyst in the Pentagon knows it means something is about to get very loud. Early Tuesday morning, United States Central Command detected what they described as an imminent multi-vector threat posture, including the fueling of medium-range ballistic missiles that had not been activated in over 3 years. These are the kinds of weapons systems that Iran only prepares when they are signaling something very specific, either a retaliatory strike against American assets in the region, a direct attack on allied nations, or the launch phase of a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm regional missile defense systems simultaneously. Intelligence officials didn't know which category this fell into or whether it fell into all three categories at once. But what they did know with absolute certainty was that Iran was fundamentally changing its military posture. And when a nation with Iran's capabilities shifts its strategic posture without any diplomatic explanation, even by the smallest measure, the entire American defense establishment pays extremely close attention. This was not a drill. This was not posturing. This was preparation for something real and something imminent. The warning issued by the Pentagon tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic or designed merely for public consumption. It was urgent. Senior officials after an emergency National Security Council meeting described Iran's moves as provocative, operationally advanced, and perhaps most importantly, irreversible without external intervention, meaning Iran had passed the point where they could simply stand down without losing the assets they had already committed to forward positions across multiple locations. But deterrence only works if the target hesitates before acting. Iran did not hesitate. In fact, their preparations today were among the most aggressive and coordinated that American intelligence has observed in the entire post-revolution era. Here is what we know happened next, within hours of confirming Iran's missile fueling operations. The United States Air Force launched B-2 Spirit stealth bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. These were not conventional bombing sorties. These were deep penetration stealth missions carrying advanced bunker-busting munitions that the Air Force only deploys when preparing to destroy hardened underground targets. Tonight, the Department of Defense confirmed that American forces launched precision strikes on multiple Iranian military targets, including an underground missile complex that had recently been activated and loaded with warheads for what analysts believe was a coordinated retaliatory attack against American bases and allied nations. Across the Persian Gulf, the B-2 bombers struck before Iran could complete their launch preparations. They hit the primary missile storage facility buried deep beneath reinforced concrete. They hit the mobile launcher staging areas positioned in dispersed locations across western Iran. They struck the command and control nodes that were coordinating the timing and targeting of the planned attack. They destroyed the communication relay stations that were likely preparing to transmit final launch authorization codes to field commanders waiting for orders. In other words, the United States targeted the entire nervous system of Iran's revenge operation, not just the weapons themselves but the infrastructure that would have made the attack operational. The launchers, the fuel depots, the command bunkers, and the communication links connecting them all together into a functioning strike capability. This is what made the Pentagon's earlier warnings so urgent and so specific. Iran's military preparations were not just symbolic saber-rattling designed to extract diplomatic concessions. They were actionable. They represented the kind of imminent threat that could have resulted in hundreds of American and Allied casualties across multiple countries if left unchecked for even another 48 hours, and the United States, understanding that reality, fully and completely responded with devastating force. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but strategically and with surgical precision that left Iran's conventional revenge capability in ruins. They did not carpet bomb Iranian cities. They did not target civilian infrastructure or population centers. They hit the missile launchers that were aimed at American bases. They hit the underground bunkers storing the warheads meant for Allied capitals. They destroyed the command centers coordinating the entire operation. And they did it all before a single Iranian missile could leave the ground. The speed, precision, and intelligence behind this operation will be studied at military academies around the world for decades to come. And here is where the story becomes even more significant for the broader geopolitical landscape. Intelligence officials now believe that Iran's latest military preparations were specifically designed to test the resolve of the United States after months of diplomatic tension and political distraction in Washington. Iran wanted to see whether America would respond with mere words, symbolic gestures, or the kind of decisive military action that carries real strategic consequences. They were probing for weakness at what they calculated was a moment of maximum American vulnerability. But instead, the exact opposite happened. The United States did not issue another diplomatic warning and wait for Iran to escalate further. They launched a military response that was so swift, so precise, and so devastating that even Iran's most hardened military commanders took notice immediately. You do not get Tehran's attention easily, because they have spent decades building tolerance to international pressure. But today the B-2 spirit proved that American stealth technology can reach any target anywhere at any time without warning, and that reality changes everything. Defense analysts speaking with multiple news outlets under anonymity described Iran's strategic shift as calibrated escalation, a calculated attempt to expand their operational reach while testing the boundaries of American tolerance. But the United States proved today that they remain both willing and capable of responding with overwhelming force when those boundaries are crossed. Their strikes were not only precise in targeting but were timed so perfectly that Iranian air defense systems never detected the B-2 bombers until the munitions had already impacted their targets deep underground. That timing element matters enormously because it demonstrates something that Iran and every other adversary watching tonight now understands clearly. It shows that American intelligence penetration of Iranian military communications is far deeper than Tehran previously believed. It shows that the United States is not a passive observer, waiting for attacks to happen before responding. They are an active force capable of identifying, targeting, and destroying threats before they materialize into actual attacks on American personnel and allied nations. As reports continued coming in throughout the evening, we learned more about the staggering scale of America's response to Iran's threat. B-2 stealth bombers carried out precision strikes on 5 separate target complexes, forcing the complete abandonment of Iran's planned retaliatory timeline. Navy destroyers positioned in the Persian Gulf targeted mobile missile launchers that had been deployed to concealed positions in the last 72 hours. Electronic warfare aircraft operating from undisclosed locations reportedly jammed the encrypted communication networks used by the Revolutionary Guard to coordinate their planned multi-vector attack. This was not just a bombing run. This was not just a show of force designed for television cameras. This was a comprehensive dismantling of an entire military operation. This was strategic decapitation of Iran's offensive capability in the region. And strategic capability is the one thing Iran has struggled to rebuild since the targeted killing of Qasem Soleimani fundamentally disrupted their regional command structure. For every advance they have made in rebuilding that capability, the United States has countered with something that sets them back even further than where they started. Remember, Iran thought the United States was too distracted by domestic politics to respond decisively to a military provocation. They thought international fatigue with Middle Eastern conflicts would prevent Washington from authorizing a major military strike. They thought their underground bunkers and dispersal tactics would protect their most valuable weapons systems from American air power. But tonight, the exact opposite of every one of those assumptions proved true. America responded within hours. The international community largely supported the defensive action, and the B-2E's bunker-busting munitions penetrated every layer of Iranian underground protection. What makes this moment so critical and so dangerous is that Iran's latest military preparations happened at a time when Supreme Leader Khamenei is under enormous internal pressure from competing factions within the regime. Hardline Revolutionary Guard commanders want immediate visible retaliation against American interests. Pragmatic government officials want a diplomatic resolution that preserves the regime's legitimacy. Religious authorities want to maintain ideological credibility without provoking a war Iran cannot win. And the Iranian public wants economic relief rather than military adventurism that brings more international sanctions. Khamenei is balancing all of these competing demands while simultaneously managing the fallout from months of internal unrest and economic deterioration. And when leaders in that position make sudden aggressive military moves, they are not doing it from a position of genuine strategic strength. They are doing it from pressure. They are doing it from vulnerability. They are doing it because they need an external enemy to distract from internal failures, and that desperation makes them unpredictable, which is precisely what makes this situation so dangerous. The Pentagon's official statement, now distributed to every major allied government and military command, was designed to signal that the United States is absolutely not willing to allow Iran to establish a credible first strike capability against American forces or allied nations in the region. Senior officials said plainly that Iran's military preparations were inconsistent with the behavior of a nation seeking peaceful resolution. That is diplomatic language for "we caught you preparing an attack and we destroyed your ability to carry it out before you could pull the trigger." Meanwhile, the president addressed the nation in a brief but forceful statement tonight. He said, "We will not wait for threats to become attacks before we act to protect American lives." He said, "The United States demonstrated tonight that our reach is global, our intelligence is precise, and our resolve is absolute." And he said, "Let this serve as a clear message to any nation that plots violence against Americans. We will find your weapons, we will find your plans, and we will destroy them before they leave the ground." These are not rhetorical flourishes. These are statements from a commander-in-chief who understands how high the stakes have become. Here is what makes the situation even more concerning going forward. Iran's preparations were not isolated to their own territory. Along with the primary missile operations inside Iran, Hezbollah forces in Lebanon also increased their alert status to the highest level observed since 2006. Houthi rebels in Yemen launched two additional attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea, and Iranian-backed militia groups in Iraq increased drone surveillance flights targeting American military installations. All of this happened within the same 72-hour window. When Iran moves multiple pieces simultaneously across multiple countries, it means something much larger is underway. Intelligence analysts are now considering several possibilities for what comes next. One is that Iran is preparing an asymmetric retaliation through proxy forces rather than direct military action using their own conventional weapons. Another is that Iran is attempting to provoke a wider regional conflict that would draw in additional actors and complicate America's strategic position. A third possibility, the one worrying senior officials the most, is that Iran is attempting to accelerate their nuclear weapons program under the cover of this conventional military crisis to create an irreversible deterrent capability. But today the United States took that last card off the table with devastating effectiveness. They did not send a diplomatic note. They did not call an emergency United Nations Security Council session. They did not wait for the international community to reach consensus. They launched B-2 stealth bombers carrying the most advanced precision munitions in the American arsenal, and they destroyed every identified component of Iran's revenge plot before it could become operational reality. That is the definition of decisive military action, and it has fundamentally altered the strategic calculus in the region. What we are watching now is a test of resolve on both sides. Iran wants to see whether the United States will sustain this level of military pressure or retreat to diplomatic negotiations. The United States wants to demonstrate that any future Iranian aggression will be met with the same swift and devastating response. Regional allies want to prevent a full-scale war that would engulf the entire Middle East, and the international community wants to prevent nuclear proliferation that would permanently destabilize global security architecture. Tonight we have heard from multiple intelligence sources who are now monitoring Iranian military communications around the clock. They say Iran's remaining military leadership is in emergency consultations and has not yet issued orders for any retaliatory action. They say the destruction of Iran's primary underground missile complex has set their offensive capability back by years, not months, and they say Iran's decision to prepare this attack is likely part of a broader survival strategy intended to demonstrate regime strength at a moment of profound internal weakness. But the United States is not standing down. In fact, the United States is reinforcing its military posture across the entire region. Additional fighter squadrons have been deployed to bases in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. A second carrier strike group is now transiting toward the Persian Gulf, and B-2 stealth bombers remain on alert at forward operating locations, ready for immediate redeployment if any additional threats are detected. Their response today, swift, precise, and overwhelming, sent a message to Tehran that the era of unanswered provocations is definitively over, and it sent a message to every American ally in the region that the United States remains committed to their security. As the coming days unfold, we expect more details to emerge about exactly what Iran hoped to achieve with this failed revenge plot and who within the regime authorized preparations that ultimately led to the destruction of billions of dollars worth of military infrastructure. But what we do know is that America's response was timely. It prevented what could have been a catastrophic multi-front attack on American and allied forces. It destroyed the physical capability Iran needed to execute its plans, and it demonstrated to every watching nation that American stealth technology and intelligence capabilities remain unmatched anywhere on Earth. What happens next will depend entirely on what Iran does in the coming days and weeks. If they choose restraint and return to diplomatic channels, this moment will be remembered as the night that American deterrence prevented a major regional war. If they choose further escalation, the United States has already demonstrated beyond any doubt that they are prepared, positioned, and absolutely willing to respond with even greater force. They have shown they are watching. They have shown they are ready. And tonight, for the first time in years, Tehran appears to be genuinely uncertain about what to do next. The Revolutionary Guard headquarters is quiet, too quiet. And when Iran is quiet after suffering a blow of this magnitude, it means they are recalculating. It means they are reassessing every assumption they held about American willingness to use decisive military force. It means they are choosing their next move very carefully, because tonight Iran learned something they should have remembered from previous encounters. American stealth bombers can reach any target on Earth without detection. American intelligence can read their preparations before they are complete. And American resolve, when tested, does not waver, does not hesitate, and does not negotiate with nations actively plotting attacks against American lives. This story is far from over. The consequences of tonight's strikes will ripple across the Middle East for months and possibly years to come. But tonight, one thing is absolutely clear. Iran's revenge plot has been wiped from the map. The B-2 spirit has struck again, and the United States has once more demonstrated why it remains the most formidable military power the world has ever known. We will be here watching every detail as the next phase of this critical story unfolds.